Welcome back to the Working Audio Tools podcast with myself, Ed Thorne, and fellow co-host Paul Third, the place of all things mixing and mastering. Last week, we dived deep, giving you lots of points about why headphones are better than speakers for mixing and mastering. So naturally, we had to flip this page and do the opposite. This week, we're going to try and think of one or two reasons.
It's been hard.
It's
been
a short
hard.
list.
Even the speaker guys fucking found it hard.
A list of reasons why speakers are better than headphones for mixing. But we came to a good conclusion last week, didn't we, Paul?
Yeah, we did, yeah. So, do you want to just do it point by point? Because Ed's, even the speaker geek's got basically a 1 point and it's A and B, and I'm clutching at straws with 5. No, I'll go first, and then we'll go for you, right? So, number one I had was that mixing on speakers is but kind of still is, the industry standard for mixing. So, kind of everything that we kind of reference has been mostly done on headphones. So if you think about, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, early 2010s, it is mostly speakers. In regards to like mixers right now, your Serbins, your Spikes, your big mixers are predominantly mixing on speakers. So in regards to even mixing on headphones, that's the reason why that, we EQ our headphones to the Harman curve, which is trying to, replicate speakers in a treated room. So, in regards to professional mixing engineers, many, not all, but many advise, tuning your headphone EQ to, speakers, and even using crossfeed to kind of narrow the image, to kind of make them more like speakers. So I would say that, there is an industry standard, and if we're trying to get ourselves, into a professional space and we're dealing with mixers who have been mixing for maybe 10, 20 years and they're mixing on speakers and, all the references that a lot of our artists and clients are going to listen to, they're going to predominantly be speaker mixes. So whilst things are changing, and people, are mixing more on headphones, the main aim is kind of to always revert back to the sound of speakers. So, a benefit of mixing on speakers is, that it kind of really is, and always has been, the industry standard. Whether that remains the industry standard, I think in 10, 20 years, that's going to maybe shift. But for where we are right now, I would say it's almost like, no, here's a good analogy. I would say speakers are like Pro Tools. Like Pro Tools
I was thinking that as you were saying.
Pro Tools is kind of like it kind of is. In the industry, it is still the industry standard for many reasons in regards to integration. But many people aren't on Pro Tools now. They're not feeling the need to be on Pro Tools. And I think that's kind of the way I see headphones a little bit. But the way it stands in the industry right now, if you want to get work in the big time, you kind of do need to be, like, if you want to be in the LA scene and blah, 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 you kind of do need to be on Pro Tools, or at least have a Pro Tools rig to give yourself kind of a good chance. And it's kind of the same as speakers. I think you should always have a pair of speakers to reference on. Right, so that is my point number one. What was your point? Or we can separate A and B, but I think it's probably going to be quite just an overarching 1 point, is it?
Well, I've just come up with another one, which is
good.
Speakers are arguably more indicative of how we hear sounds naturally, because although you can dial in crossfeed into headphones, i.e. you can feed one ear into the other, so naturally we hear the same sound source in both ears, just slightly different times. Yes, you can manipulate that with headphones, and yes, you can model rooms so that you can dial in reflections, but all that stuff is digital processing, whereas with speakers you can just hear the source in both ears hear both speakers and all the reflections, and not just the sides, the ceilings and the floors. So arguably it's a more realistic experience.
Yes, I think you could say that. However, I would say like the Slate VSXs, and especially the real phones and stuff, it's crazy some of the stuff you could do on them. But as Ed said, again, you don't need to invest in that. You could have a pair of speakers and, I'll just do it. However, the hard thing is with the speakers is obviously what you hear in the real world is very, very subjective and very variable. And that's why translation is such a bugger. But I do genuinely believe that if you are mixing solely on headphones, I do think you should have a pair of speakers in there just so you can hear, how the room sounds. Hopefully you have a well-treated room, but just to get an idea of how the room sounds. So One of those things, and this is what brings me on to a point I've got, that is really good to have speakers in regards to judgment, if you don't have it, something like real phones or something like that, is when you mix on headphones, you've got to be very careful with your verbs. Because you have no room reflections in headphones, it means that you've got a very, very dry sound, where it can be the opposite, especially the more reflective the room is and the more ambience you have in the room. What you'll find is that the reverbs that you add and the ambience that you add in a track, it's not that it multiplies, it's just that, again, it reflects around the room, and you've got that ambience that you've added synthetically on top of the actual ambience of your room. And the less untreated it is, the more ambience that you're going to have. So it's very important to bear in mind that if you have a very wet mix on headphones, and then for translation, you stick that in somebody's kitchen and they're listening on an Alexa or a Bluetooth speaker, you got to be very wary, because that overly wet mix in headphones is going to be like, boom. It's going to be like that one mix I did. Remember, you were like, Paul Third at Wembley Arena. And I went for totally overboard with it. So yeah, that was a point I had, that it's very good as a translation thing to keep you kind of realistic. And I suppose that brings us back to Ed's point, where even though in last week's episode we were kind of in agreement that most consumers are going to listen to music for long periods of time on headphones and earbuds, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be listening to, in their kitchen, in the living room, on their TV, where again things are untreated. So I always find that it's very good for me to judge if I've overdone something in headphones on a pair of speakers, where many people would argue, well, if you're on just a pair of speakers, you're going to get that right. Because essentially, the speakers are in the end what win the battle in regards to ambience. You know what I mean? That's what I normally judge, and that's something that I still struggle to judge with. I remember I tried to judge verbs and ambience more in the Atmos room, which is super dead, super tight. And I think I struggled more because it was so dead, where when I come in this room, it's more adequately treated. The decay time's under 200 milliseconds across the board, but it's got a little bit more vibe to it. It's got the speakers can play more in the room. So I kind of find that this room's pretty good for me, a middle ground for judging, kind of ambience and stuff, because it is very important. Because if you get your ambience wrong and you do a very, very, very strong headphone mix, very solely done in headphones, you hand it back to a client that's listening on a pair of fucking HS5s in an untreated bedroom, they might be like, whoa, dude, what the fuck have you done? Back that shit off. And then you end up looking less professional, you know what I mean? Where if you mix on speakers, you're not going to have that issue. And at the end of the day, you're still going to get good translation to headphones, because what you'll find is that having a slightly more dry mix in headphones is much better than having a really overly wet, fucking drenched mix on speakers. So
yeah,
that was my point.
Let's just go on a slight tangent, because I've had this conversation with a few people outside of the podcast where they have felt speaker mixers translate to headphones better than headphone mixers translate to speakers. And again, we were very polar opposite, and we've met in the middle, understanding the necessity, Jesus, of both.
Got there in the end.
And to further on from your point there, in terms of real world feedback, as it were, consumer device translation is one thing. That's kind of my part A. Like Alexas and, crappy cafe, restaurant, lift speakers, I'd say it could be classed as consumer devices as well, public address systems. But they also need to, speakers, really the only way we can get things to translate to festivals, which are hugely popular if you're lucky enough to get music played at festivals.
And that kind of brings me into a point that I've got. Now, one of the other things I've got in regards to real world listening is that there are haptics involved in speakers. Now, when you listen on a pair of headphones, what you'll find is that, especially if you listen to the Hifimans, especially the Nanda and Nanos, and you get those things slamming, fucking hell, man, your head's pure rattling, and you're like, oh, this is banging. However, when you get a really good banging speaker mix, especially if you listen to PMCs, if you go to Tile Yard's fucking PMC room, that mix hits you in the gut. And there's a visceral feeling with speakers that's very important. And then a lot of times there's a lot of, a feel to speakers, which could be difficult to get on headphones because you can't feel the music. You feel it differently. It's bullshit that people say you can't feel music in headphones. Of course you can. It's just that the feeling is different. But I would say a lot of the times that is probably more in regards to the transient sometimes, again, coming at you. In the low end, again, circulator in the room. But again, it's very room dependent. But yeah, I do find that haptics is important in regards to feel. And I've also got a little sub point here, which is sub. There is a difference between the low end of the Hifiman and Nanos and, a really good sub in a room. You feel the sub. I mean, there's time when I had boom in the Atmos mix that I had, and Ed was like, whoa! I got a wee Ed Thorne, whoa! Because you felt it. There's certain Atmos mixes that I've got, or just certain mixes that I've got with the sub, especially in Atmos, because you've got that. The LFE channel's got your plus 10 dB. So when a low frequency effect comes, you feel it. And if you're listening to a movie, for example, I know this is away from music, but if you listen to a movie, you get a much different experience in the movie theatre or in my Atmos room when you get that low effect and it's like, boom, something comes in and it's like a jump scare, like you feel it. And it's amazing like how some tracks can really, really hit you differently on speakers than on headphones, and that's why I always think it is beneficial to have a sub in the room. If you're mixing on speakers, it just gives you a really good representation where you can really, really nail it in headphones. And normally I find if I nail it in the Ananda Nanos, that it translates near perfect to the sub. But there might be an occasion where you maybe don't have the best low end in your headphones, maybe a bit coloured, or again you don't EQ them and they're quite light. When you go in a sub, you're going to feel the low end, and if low end is out of control, you will know straight away in a sub. It'll just wash out the mix. And especially if you've got 808s and you've got really big bass parts in there, you might not hear it on your fucking, your IN5s or your fucking HS5s. But you get a room in with a sub, you're going to feel it and you're going to just be like, whoa, the bass is either, wow, that's right, or it's out of control. And it's amazing the amount of mixes that I've had from mentoring clients who have been, mixing on, smaller speakers without a sub, or again, mixing on, a pair of headphones and they're not EQ'd them, stick them in the Atmos room. And I remember I had one mentoring client and I was like, right, let's take that mix into the Atmos room with the sub, played it in stereo. And he was like, whoa, yeah, my bass is all over the shop. I was like, yeah, you hear that? I was like, yeah, I didn't hear that before. I was like, yeah, because you've got all of that low frequency content. That's what you got to be careful with speakers, is that, again, dependent on the driver, the size of the driver, again, that's going to dictate how much low end that you've got. And then you've got, again, the whole fucking treating the room and getting that to sound right. But if you treat your room correctly and you have your really good sub in the room, you will definitely be able to judge the low end differently than you judge it in headphones. And if you get both of them right, really you should have low end that's just, chef kiss.
Now, I'd like to take things to the other end of the frequency spectrum. And this is an argument for speakers, but I'd like to know your thoughts on this.
Okay.
There is an argument that this whole concept of adding air into a mix, frequencies 20K and above, and some speakers go up to 30 kilohertz, and everyone's like, why? We don't hear, most of us don't hear above 16.
Infrasonic stuff, yeah.
Now, what's interesting about that theory is that above 20 kilohertz, in the region of 23 kilohertz, I believe, apparently that is where frequencies start interacting with alpha brainwaves in our brain. So similarly to haptics, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we don't hear them, but apparently we can feel them. And I'm pretty convinced I don't get that in headphones.
Right. Want me to tell you the reason why I think that's bullshit?
Yes.
Is because most mixers are high passing that shit out. You can't create air when it's not there in the first place. If you look at most mixers, even if you think about working in a 48 kilohertz session, your bandwidth is 24 kilohertz. So if you could say, oh, I've got speakers that go up to fucking 30K, you're like, right, but one, in regards to acoustic energy, the energy of high end dissipates the more it is. In regards to like instruments, like there aren't many instruments that are going to make that high up. And even if they do make that high up, only a fucking dog is really going to be able to hear them. And then even to the point where most mixers do. If we look at Emra Chelik, I mean, I use his Mixbus EQ, and what's he got? He's got a fucking low pass filter at about 19 kilohertz. And loads of mixers do it because they're just
as
like...
low as 19?
Yeah.
What dB per octave?
18, I think.
Okay, so in mastering, I'll commonly use... Actually, in mixing, I pretty much always put a 24 kilohertz at 24 dB per octave slope. In mastering, I have actually recently been bringing it down to as low as 20, I think. But yeah, 19 makes sense.
Yeah, so to me, it's pointless because we're fucking filtering it out anyway. And I mean, you could maybe say in regards to, like, the difference to me with the haptics is that, like, if we think about this, like, the sheer size of, you know, bass
the
waves.
Waves,
yeah, you know what I mean? If we think about, again, we think about the difference in energy from low end to high end. So I don't know. I just think that's maybe a thing that people have made up just to fucking, like, say, our speaker's got a 30k. Let me find you people on the internet that'll tell you that they can feel it.
I like the theory. I like it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a bit of fun. Right, my last 2 points are me clutching at straws. This is number 2, and it is a good point, I suppose. But this is more for if you've got clients in the room. So for, you know, somebody like MSM, right, for example, he's somebody that has a lot of clients, you know, in his mixing room. Now, obviously, if you're on headphones, the limitation that you've got is that for them to hear the mix as was intended, they really should be listening on the system that you were mixing on. Now, the only way you can do this on headphones is that if you've got the exact same pair of headphones, you would need to have 2 sets of fucking Hifiman and Nanos. So it's possible. But in most cases, you will find that you can have more people in the room. You can have a whole band in. You could be mixing a record, get them in and be like, right, okay, everybody take a seat. And this is why we talked about the importance of the sweet spot. Isn't really a sweet spot on headphones, or if there is, it's just like a one physical sweet spot. So you are dealing with multiple different sweet spots, and they will all hear the mix differently. However, if you've got a good, you know, width of your speakers, and there are speakers that have very good sweet spots. Even the PreSonus Era Studio 8s, they've got that kind of wave. I can't remember what kind of waveguide it's called, but it's like the Neumanns. Now the Neumanns have got that really oval, bowl-shaped waveguide. So that's there. It's really wide, and I can move, and it sounds pretty much the same. But I would say that is a benefit for if you're dealing with clients. You could be both in the room, and, you know, dependent on where you've got your setup, the width of it. And on the speakers, again, if you're like Ed and you've got the Amphians, it's a narrower sweet spot. But if you've got something like the Heads, you've got kind of wider dispersion. So that could be beneficial if, you know, you've got a business that is clients in the studio and, you know, they're not making their decisions on their shitty fucking, you know, whatever, their Beats headphones or whatever. So
I don't think that's clutching at straws. I think that's a very valid point.
Have you got anything else, Ed? Are you still clutching at straws?
I am with the next one. Speakers are a fucking great way to spend money, man.
Fucking Jesus. I knew this was going to get into this.
Because they're so much more expensive than headphones.
Yeah.
Give or take the headphones. Now, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Obviously, our ears, the sensitivity of our ears changes at different volumes, and the perception of frequency changes, and the Fletcher-Munson curve documents this. Can you and do you feel that in headphones, or is that more of a speaker phenomenon?
No, it's just the loudness coming into your ears. I think this is something that I've had loads of discussions to people with, and people have got this thing. The internet's got this thing where they just make up shit to kind of make a certain narrative, make a certain point. The way that, you know, now there is science that kind of will argue this a little bit, but in general terms, right? 85 dB SPL coming from there to there is no different really from 85 dB SPL coming from there to there. The only difference is the direct sound. With speakers, the direct sound is blended in with the reflected sound, and that reaches your ears, right? So many people have got this thing where they think that 85 dB SPL is way too loud, because what is really stupid with the internet is that the level is all about, you know, the distance, right? So it's relative to your distance. So if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at my speakers now, right? If they're all at 85 dB SPL in my template, right? So if I was to sit here, it's 85 dB SPL. If I sit at the back of the room, it'll be like 75 or 78 dB SPL. If I put my ear right fucking next to that speaker, it's going to be like 90, 100 and odd. So it's all relative to distance. So when you're listening to 85 dB SPL in here, it's relative to the distance. If I was to take those headphones, take them off my head and put them across the room, it's going to be really, 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 really super quiet. And then what many people get wrong is they see the loudness in the wrong kind of dB weighting. So you've got different weightings, right? You've got dBA, which essentially is a band pass. So dBA will roll off the low end, roll off the high end, where dBC weighted takes more low end into consideration. It's not completely flat, but it's more in relation to human perception. So when you are on headphones, this is what many people get wrong, or they just don't understand it. That see like 85 dB C in headphones, especially if you've got your headphones EQ'd to the Harman curve, what you're going to find is there's more proximity to the low end, right, to your ears. So what happens is the low end in headphones is that prominent that it actually theoretically gives you less headroom in regards to loudness. If we think about the way that low end plays in a room, again, you've got distance, right? If we think about in headphones, if I get my measurement mic or I get an SPL meter and I stick it in the middle of the cups, the low end is at the same distance as all the rest of the frequency spectrum. I suppose you can say the same with speakers, but there's a difference in a room, right? Blah, 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 blah. So if we think about we're on Harman and we've already got a lot of low end and the proximity of the low end is really, really close to your ears, then 85 dB C in headphones isn't as loud as what you think because the low end is taking up so much of the like theoretical headroom. And that's what many people forget, that, you know, DBC in, you know, speakers and monitors is different to, you know, DBC in headphones. There's different variables at play here. There's more science it goes way, way, way above, you know, what I know. But yeah, it's very important with loudness that you understand that, you know, the proximity does change the way that the measurement process is. Now, if you use dBA weighted, that's different. That's why I say many people will get confused. They'll say, yeah, 85 dBi in headphones is pretty loud. Yeah, it could be because you've not got that low end kind of reducing the headroom for the measurement. So if it's all mid-range and you've not got that low end weight in it, then yeah, you are going to be listening louder. So it's amazing when you measure, say, 85 dBA and 85 dBc to headphones that are tuned to Harman, and you listen, you know, to like an EDM track or whatever, something that's got a lot of low end in it, you'd be amazed at the difference in loudness in regards to like how hard you crank your preamp from dBA to dBc. So that's very important to bear in mind. The more mid-rangey the headphones are and the speakers are, again, yeah, that's you're going to perceive them more. So that's something that's very important to bear in mind when you're thinking about levels.
I was testing a device earlier. By the time this episode comes out, the video will be out. The Audient ID48 review on my channel. And yeah, I was measuring some stuff with A and C weighting, and the difference was several decibels.
It was.
In three different sets of headphones.
And that genuinely could be the difference from something being loud enough to being too loud. And I think that's something else that many people struggle with as well with speakers, is that, I don't say most people, but a lot of people don't have subs. Or again, they might be listening on like 5-inch fucking, you know, speakers, you know, woofers, and they don't make that much low end, where, you know, you might maybe get lower frequency extension. You know, Amphians, I think, some Amphians go down, the ones you had before, what did they go down to, like 50 or something like that?
Yeah, the 115s go down to 49 hertz, I think.
So if you think about the way the energy works in acoustic sound, and you think about the difference between in headphones having that extension really all the way down to 20 hertz, having that difference from 20 hertz to 50 hertz, and having that in your headphones and not having that in your speakers, that can, again, that's going to influence the loudness measurements. And that's why a lot of the times what I say is, it's good to give you a general reference, but use your ears. Like, that's what I say to people. It's like, if something feels too loud and it's really hurting your ears, and you're like, oh my God, this is giving me a fucking migraine, that's too loud. Like, your brain tells you if something's too loud. Like, many people are like, oh, you're going to ruin your hearing, listen to 85 dB SPLC. And I'm like, well, I've been doing this for like 2-3 years or whatever, and I don't have any issues. My hearing's fine. I've been listening at that level.
2 or 3 years is not a career. Speak to me when you've done it for 17 years.
I'll be fine. Again, at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to impact. Like, I'm not listening to, for example, like Ed's career, for example, as a fucking drummer. Like, that is loud, sharp SPLs constantly. That's fucking loud.
I've been very careful in my drumming career.
Yeah, you've got to be. When I had a drummer in the live room and we were setting up his kit, it'd be the first time I'd been in a room with drums in ages. Jesus Christ, even you're not listening to drums in a room for ages, it's so loud. Yeah. And I remember even I was having a go playing at it. I was like, this is so loud. Get me a pair of fucking earbuds or something. Jesus, that's loud. So then it's funny because like I'll then go to the fucking Hifimans and I'll be like, wow, this is really fucking quiet. It's like, there's science out there, and I think the more that people mix on headphones, and again, guys like me and Emra, like I've been doing it for like 2-3 years. Emra's been doing this on headphones for 5-6 years or however long it is at those levels, and I think Emra listens a little bit louder than I do, and that man's still getting billions of streams. You know what I mean? Fucking crazy.
I think 82 is my headphone level.
Is it?
I feel 82 to 85.
Now people find it funny with me because if you check it on an SPL meter, it can go maximum. It can go to 92, but again, this is what they do, ladies and gentlemen. Them's and theys, right? And his reaction. That's only if the track is really, 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 really super subby. So if I've got a track that's like proper subs in the mix and it's so much low energy in the subs, then that weighs heavily on the measurement. Where this is what's funny, right? You'll say, 92, fucking hell. Yeah, 92 because of the low end. You got to remember the way that the human ear, how we perceive things. We are not that, we don't really perceive low end that much. So as much as the energy is up here, because we don't perceive it as much, it doesn't hurt our ears as much. What hurts our ears are more of the frequencies that we are susceptible to. So if you take a 1 kilohertz sine tone and fucking crack it at like 100 dB, you're going to be on the floor with your hands on. You know what I mean? Think about alarms. That's the reason why house alarms and car alarms, they're normally at higher frequencies. So you're like, whoa, it wakes people up. That's what it does. But if you've got loads of low end energy, you'll feel it, but it's probably not going to wake you up. That's what I find. So there you go, right? As soon as I said all the low end energy. So I could listen to a really subby track and it'd be 92 dB SPL at one point, at just a really loud chorus bit at one point. And then it'll jump down to maybe 85. But then if I put that on dBA, it might be, 80 dBA. But dBc, it reaches to 92. So again, it's all relative to the low frequency content. So
if you don't have an in-house mastering engineer like we're fortunate enough to have with Marcel at Actu Make with the working audio tools, DistroKid have you covered. For just $99 a year, you can buy unlimited mastering for all of your tracks in tandem with unlimited releases via DistroKid. Mixair from DistroKid uses AI technology to measure the EQ and the dynamics of your track and then present you with numerous options to tweak and customize your master. You can flip between the original and the generic mastered option.
Blame it on the whiskey. Blame it on the bad weed.
So instantly we can hear that's making the track louder, and it's also slightly flattening the EQ, bringing in a little bit more of the mid-range and of course the top end. We can adjust the intensity, which is how much compression and limiting is being applied to the track.
Blame it on the only thing you've ever seen. Run and tell your mother. Blame it on your brother.
I think somewhere in the middle works for this track. And the EQ options are self-explanatory. We can make the track effectively duller or brighter.
Just ain't right. All you do is lie. All you do is try to deny. All you do is lie. Even when you know it just ain't right. All you do is lie.
Download your mastered track and release it as easily as you do all of your other unlimited uploads. Get 30% off your DistroKid subscription using the Working Audio Tools VIP link below. You know, something we didn't mention in the headphone episode is they're not subject to phase discrepancies.
Nah, they still are. There's still phase issues in headphones.
But not to the extent speakers are.
No, not to the extent, but there is still phase issues in headphones. That's why we get, resonances, in there and stuff. And analog sound, analog audio is, phase is fucking everywhere. You can't get rid of it. But yes, that's less susceptible to phase issues.
And we're supposed to be talking about the pros of speakers.
I know, it's really difficult.
For me, I just think humans have evolved hearing sound all around them naturally, feeling sound for thousands of years. And for me as a live musician, performing in venues, been on stages with the subs underneath, been out front doing sound, the acoustics of physics just feels more like home to me. Headphones I like, I'm getting to like, but for me it's traditionally, this is, like I said, this has changed a little bit. I am starting to mix on the nanos, which I never thought I would say, but I am doing. And then I go to the Amphions because I love them. Now, that also got me thinking with your recent video about your mix workflow and being able to mix anywhere. That got me thinking, and I've thought this many times in the last year, do I need to be tied to a studio when you can mix on headphones? You could take an Anchor soundbar, portable speaker, Bluetooth speaker around with you, mix to mobile to mix on your phone, maybe a set of KH80s. Yes, I did say Neumann's, but I think the KH80s are their best speakers. Or the Amphion 115s, little compact things, limit the amount of noise you make on those. And I might do this in my new flat. This has crossed my mind to save myself a significant amount of money each month. But then I realised something, Paul. Do you know what that is?
What is it?
I just love analog gear.
I knew you were going to say that. I should have just said it. I know. All the fun, now that many people will say, yeah, it's a fun thing. It's more enjoyable. Many people enjoy. There is now.
It is.
Yeah, when you've got a good sub and stuff.
It's probably more of a hindrance. It's probably more inaccurate. There's less you can do with it because digital plugins are just so versatile. But it makes it fun. Anyway, one day I might get to the point where I think, nah, sack it off. But by then I'll be deaf, so it won't matter.
Right, now as you were speaking about, hearing the sound immersive, that brings me on to my last point. Obviously, the benefit of speakers is a big part is Dolby Atmos because you can't do it right in headphones yet. You just can't. I've tried it a few times and it's really, really, really difficult because you don't have the height, you don't have the physical side.
The benefits of speakers can't be Atmos when the whole point of Atmos is speakers.
Mate, but see when I say clutching at straws, mate, I'm fucking clutching at straws, mate. But yeah, I would say that I think if that's the way that things are going, I think what the Atmos side showed me was, the benefits of what speakers can give you in regards to a physical 3D space. That's just something that headphones, there's certain bits of software that I've tried that, that are decent. Sphere does a decent job and stuff like that, but there's nothing better than sitting in the Atmos room, with the height and, with the width and the sides and having something physically come right behind your ear. And I love the Atmos room. Like, it's really brought a love of music back to me. And I find myself sometimes just listening to records that I like and thinking about, I could put that there and that there and that there. And it's really opened up speakers again to show you the benefits of, having, interaction. It's more, again, I suppose that's the benefit that I would say. If the thing about Atmos is the immersive side of it. If you are mixing, again, you can hear how, as we spoke about earlier, how the sound kind of works with the room, judging reverb tails and stuff like that. But yeah, Ed, that's me. Like, that is me clutching at every straw that I could get.
Do you know what we could do an episode on, or would be the next logical conclusion, but I don't really have any any input on this either, would be in-ear monitors.
Emra's really into in-ear monitors, but I don't know, I really, really don't get on with them that much. I've got the Oracles and I use them for editing and it's good for isolation, blah, 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 but There's just something about over-ears. Look, I'm blessed when it comes to like over-ears because, you know, Hifimans are really comfortable and there's just a split. I think once I was spoiled by the HEs, the HE1000 SEs, they're light. They're just like, fuck, you're just like, well, once you hear that, you're just like, I cannot unhear that. There is no in-ear on the planet that's ever going to get to HE1000 SE levels. There's a closed field to in-ears. Emrah's said to me there's the audio I've got in the Monarch Mark III. He went, they were quite good, but he went, still not the over-ears. And they're expensive. They're like, I think, you know, to get kind of close to over-ears and in-ears, you got to spend a lot of fucking money to get like the over-ear sound, where I'm just like, just get a pair of fucking over-ears. There's many, I actually had a message from somebody and he was like a big fan of in-ears, like, Paul, you've just not tried enough. I'm like, I've tried 6 fucking sets of in-ears now and I'm still not blown away with them. Like, I tried to do the Roses mix, a bit of it. I remember I spent 15-20 minutes in the middle of it. I think I was like, right, let me just listen to see what this sounds like. And I was struggling soundstage wise, and I always struggle with soundstage. Funnily enough, I don't think they need crossfeed, which is most in-ears I always feel they do. But these Oracle Mark IIIs, I didn't feel they need crossfeed. But the image was still it was too narrow for me, and I was struggling to play stuff, and I felt like I was fighting with the mix. Where with a good pair of open ears or a really good pair of speakers, especially like the MTM Precisions in the Atmos room, things just open up and I can just play stuff and it's just easier for me. I feel like I need to work harder in regards to mixing on in-ears. I feel like I need to work harder. With the Hifimans, I don't need to work, really. The Nanos tell me what I need to know. The HEs tell me what I need to know. Even the MX4s, I'm getting used to them now with the new EQ I've got. I know kind of what they should be telling me. Again, Real Phones tells me what it should tell me. So, yeah, in-ears are not really for me. What should be in your experience? I don't think you've ever really tried to even mix on a pair of in-ears, have you?
I have extensive experience using in-ears as a
not mixing on
musician
them.
and a sound engineer, but I don't like mixing on them. Yeah, just feel closed. I think I did try with some CTM, some clear tune monitors, and yeah, it's not for me. But I would have been too, when I tried that, I would have been too into my speaker channel.
True.
Speaker
So
groove.
yeah, I don't think we're going to do one. And also we did one video on this podcast where it was I tried to do an Atmos mix on in-ears just for a fucking laugh, and it tanked. I think it's our worst performing video yet. So Atmos and in-ears, people aren't interested. So I think we'll move away from the in-ear side of it. But yeah, that's like, I know people in the comments will be raging because the speaker nuts will be like, how dare you? You had 12, 15 points about mixing on headphones. You struggled to find points for mixing on speakers. Mixing on speakers is amazing. Yeah, there is good points of it. But I think like
leave them in the comments. Let us know.
Yeah, leave them in the comments. But I think like to end it, right? The main reason we made this is to show you that there are positives to both. And really, the best middle ground is not to pick one, pick both. If you pick both, you'll have the best of both worlds. And if you learn what each of them can give to you, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to have better translation. You're not going to have to second guess yourself on like certain things. And if you utilize the best of both worlds, then you will hopefully have the best world for you, which is all that we're trying to find in this grueling world that is audio. So,
yeah,
get both, find the best you can get.
I think that's what it is for me. It's translation, and I enjoy going around all the different systems.
So do I.
Especially the Anchor. Well, I don't enjoy the Anchor soundbar. It sounds like crap, but that's the point of it. It highlights something, and it highlights, it pushes the vocals out on every mix. A bit like my van. My van is weirdly very vocal forward by like 2 dB, it's maybe even 3. The Anchor's the same. And it really highlights when something is popping out too much and how much the limiting is playing a factor.
Yep.
And your mobile phone as well, same thing. If you can get a mix to sound good on a mobile phone where everything just sits there, you're not relying on the low end for punch, the levels are right, you've not got too much saturation, because if you have, you'll hear it on your phone, especially
100%.
Turn your phone up and sideways to full volume. That's a great test. Mix to mobile for that. And then the headphones, every set of headphone I've got will change the sound. I didn't mean to correct you on one thing in last week's episode. Now I look over and look at my my Neumann NDH30s, which is that they're not influenced by changing sound. The NDH30s do sound different depending on how forward or back you have them on your ear.
Oh, that is a good point, yeah. So it's just all about getting the right fit, isn't it? It's getting the right fit, getting the right headband, the right cups as well.
Doing the puppy shake.
But yeah, pads also, like, honestly, for people that don't know, pads genuinely do change the
big
timbre.
time. The Sennheiser
headphones.
HD490 Pros come with black suede pads and kind of more materially felt one. No, not felt, are they? I don't know. I think it's felt and suede. Anyway, two different things. The sound difference is massive. One has more low end, less top end. One has more top end. And
so there's limitations to both. And what we're telling you is, don't live your life with limitations. Try and get the best of both worlds. Live your life with as least limitations as you can. Then hopefully you'll have a better life. Just, transcend this.
Live your life in speaker and headphone abundance with the working audio tools.
Take it to your life. Use the working audio tools as a mantra for your life outside of audio, right? Don't live with limitations. Let the world be your oyster. And my name's Paul Ferd, that said Thorne, and we will see you again when we think about something else to do. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.